saw them on CNN attacking the Capitol.
And the ACLU. I saw a politician molesting kids. Does that mean you molest kids?
What?
Exactly.
In the air, you know what's in the air. You know what's in the air. You know what's in the air. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so the debate for California governor happened last night, and there was a couple points in this debate that I wanted to go over. It's turned into a very interesting debate, basically ever since Eric Swalwell dropped out over some various allegations that were coming out, kind of just like an avalanche of allegations that came out, some videos that looked pretty bad. So he was out of the race, and that essentially has cleared the way for Tom Steyer, who is a billionaire, to become pretty much the most prominent Democrat in the race. He's running a very progressive campaign on things like single-payer health care, taxing the rich, etc. And then you randomly have a surge, not only from two Republicans in the race, but also this candidate Becerra, who is the favorite of the fossil fuel lobbies in the race, essentially. And it seems like a lot of groups like that have dumped money into trying to boost his campaign in the wake of Eric Swalwell dropping out, because they want anybody but Tom Steyer to win. So at the same time, you also see people writing about the fact that the Republicans have the best shot at this race that they have in a while in California. There's two Republicans. One of them is more serious than the other, and we'll get to all that. I'm not going to cover too much of them in the debate, but I'll talk about it a little bit. So that being said, here is Tom Steyer and Becerra going at it a little bit over their backgrounds and what their intentions are. So you'll see the difference in the dynamic there. And then Katie Porter also presses Tom Steyer here about his position on the upcoming billionaire tax in California. So here's that, and then we'll get into all of it.
This war in Iran has driven up the gas by at least $1.50. And the truth is, we should be taxing the oil companies because they are getting a windfall profit as a result of the war that the president that they put into office started for no apparent reason. We should be taxing that money. We should send it directly to Californians' pockets, not to the government of California. And let me say this, being in bed with oil companies is a mistake. Javier Becerra has taken the max amount of money from Chevron, and he has said they're good guys that we need. The truth of the matter is the oil companies are ripping us off at the pump, they're polluting our air, and they're burning up the planet.
Thank you, Secretary Becerra. Your response.
Yeah, it's a rich response from a guy who made his billions investing in fossil fuels, in oil companies, in coal companies. Now he makes the billions, and he has spent more than every other candidate combined in his campaign, using those profits to now try to buy his seat in the governor's office. Tom, the last thing we need is someone who makes riches from investing in oil companies and then accuse everyone else of doing the wrong thing.
Can I
Steyer?
Look, I walked away from my company 14 years ago so I could give back to California. I am the person on this stage who is fighting the oil companies. And the way that you know is they're spending millions of dollars to prevent me from getting elected.
Well, why not give back your billions of dollars that you made in profits?
Make polluters pay. And the truth of the matter is, every environmentalist in this state has endorsed me.
All right,
and the people who are opposing me, you can just follow the money. The oil companies, the electric monopolies are spending tens of millions of dollars against me. The environmentalists are to a person supporting me. That's what's going on in this election.
Just last week, a one-time 5% tax on the assets of billionaires cleared a critical hurdle to make the ballot in November, setting up a clash over what could be the nation's first wealth tax. Congresswoman Porter, Mr. Steyer, as we just referenced, is the only billionaire on the stage. He supports this tax. You do not. Why not?
Because I support good ideas, not things that help me dodge political potholes due to my own background. This billionaire's tax is simply not good tax policy. And anybody who has watched me in Congress take on bank CEOs, take on pharma CEOs, challenge them for the fact that their workers can't make ends meet while they're pocketing $26 million a year, knows that I will speak truth to power. And here is the truth. This tax isn't going to fundamentally change California's economy in the way that young people and the working people of California need. It's a one-time tax.
Mr. Steyer, just about cheap political points, your response?
No. I have said that billionaires like me should pay more taxes and the big corporations should pay more taxes.
Excuse me,
and
you
that's
literally
why,
said...
if this proposition is on the ballot in November, I'll vote for it. But going forward, we do need to go further.
I'm confused. Do you support the billionaire's tax that is going to be on the ballot in November, yes or no?
Katie, I just said I will vote for it if it's on the ballot in November. So what I've said is,
but you just said it wasn't a good idea.
Go far enough.
Yeah, so the dynamic between Becerra and Tom Steyer is that Becerra is the one who's able to point to him and say, you're a billionaire, etc. Really, they all are. Katie Porter is taking advantage of that as well. But Tom Steyer is outflanking all of them on the issues, especially Becerra, who is kind of trying to play the middle ground, but ultimately he's the corporate candidate. So when Tom Steyer points to the fact that he's being bankrolled by like Chevron and other fossil fuel interests, etc., and that those groups are spending a lot of money specifically to stop Tom Steyer's campaign, he's correct. That is what's happening. And Tom Steyer has been able to float his campaign to the point where he is the most prominent Democrat in the race on a very progressive agenda. So to me, it looks like he has the best chance of eking this out. Like I said, the sudden support for Becerra is out of nowhere. Now, he probably has a little bit more name recognition now. And because of all of this, the Democratic vote's going to be pretty split. Seems to me, though, that because of the positions Tom Steyer is taking, he is by far going to be the more popular candidate and probably has the potential to run away with it. I'm not seeing anything that gets in the way. There's a couple things about his background, like former investments in detention facilities and other capitalist ventures that he has either detached from or apologized for or explained his logic on or whatever. But the reality is this is a guy who has already spent an enormous amount of money on different foundations and stuff, giving to causes. So as far as billionaires go, he seems to be one of the ones who's motivated towards some of these issues. And Katie Porter tries to press him on this issue of the billionaire tax. So on a lot of these issues, there's kind of multiple things that are being discussed at once that make it all a little complicated. But essentially what they're talking about there is that there is a proposed one-time billionaire tax that's going to be on the ballot. So it's being pushed to get on the ballot in November, which isn't a sure thing yet, but that's a fight that's happening currently. Now, that's a one-time tax that would go directly towards healthcare. So in some cases, some other things, but around 90% of what that tax would be allocated for would be healthcare services throughout the state. So both Katie Porter and Tom Steyer are arguing here that this particular tax isn't going to be effective because it doesn't go far enough and doesn't allocate the revenue from the tax towards enough things. However, Katie's trying to press him on the idea that he still said he supports it, even though he says that it's not the best tax proposal. Now, the only real argument against that would be that the one-time tax measure does create a disincentive for businesses in California, which isn't worth it because that tax doesn't go towards enough things. If you want to make that argument, then make that argument. But this is ultimately a tax proposal that came from the teachers' unions and the nurses' unions in California. So I think there's an argument to be made that like this particular proposal doesn't allocate those funds well enough. But ultimately, it's because of the demands of the unions in California, which is why it is a smart move politically for Tom Steyer to say that he would support it. So in this next part, they talk about healthcare, and the term single-payer healthcare, Medicare for all, get tossed around a lot here. So essentially the difference here would be that Medicare for all is federal. So Medicare for all is done at the federal level, which would take California completely out of the equation in terms of providing healthcare. So when they're talking about the difference between single-payer healthcare, that's single-payer healthcare in California as a proposal, as opposed to Medicare for all on a federal level, which would remove the need for California to have single-payer healthcare. So going off of that, here is Becerra being asked if he would support single-payer healthcare.
So, as governor, you're pushing for a single-payer system in California?
We should try to get to a Medicare for all program. And while we are continuing to work in that direction, we should make sure we are expanding coverage, because the most important thing we have to do is give people peace of mind that they can afford their health care, and that we will continue to give it to more families.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steyer.
Look, I am for single payer. Absolutely, because the only way we can deliver healthcare as a right at a cost that California can afford. And that's why the nurses support me. I was with them this morning. They know that I will fight for single payer until we get it. And maybe those reports were wrong, Javier. But the truth is, the group you are with, the California Medical Association, is the strongest group against single payer in the state. And they just spent the maximum amount of money. They maxed out to your campaign after that meeting.
covering everyone with something is not single payer. It's not even federal Medicare for all. But you won't say that whether you support California having its own state-run single-payer system. Look, Tom ran against single-payer in his presidency before he changed his mind and has decided to run for single-payer. I'm not disputing that, Tom. I'm making sure everyone knows. And you've been consistent on this point. You've been consistent.
I'm going to answer that.
But I want Javier to answer the question. Do you support California having its own single-payer system? Yes or no?
And Katie, the answer there is that Californians don't care what you call it so long as they have affordable health care that they can use to take their child to the doctor or the hospital
I'd
when
like
they
to use
need
my
it.
magic wand and give everybody affordable health care.
Homelessness is very important. But the number one problem in California is Californians can't afford to live here. And the number one issue on affordability is housing. And we skipped over it. We didn't really talk about how we're going to build houses in this state. And the truth is, people can talk about permitting. And it's true, I work for reform of CEQA. They can talk about zoning. We need to build densely around public transportation. And they can talk about constructing offsite. They'll drop costs by at least a third. But what they don't talk about is the cities and counties of this state do not want new housing because new housing brings in people and they can't afford to pay the health and education costs. That's why the fact that I'm willing to close a corporate loophole and bring in 22. But let me say this. This is the key. They will welcome housing if they can afford to take care of the people. And I talked to a mayor on Saturday who said, if you'll do it.
Yeah, so
I'll
going
support
back
you, and I
to
love it.
Becerra here, essentially when he says that he supports Medicare for all and that we should be working towards covering as many people in the meantime, he's completely punting. What that means is that, yes, I support Medicare for all, but as the governor of California, I'm not going to do anything. You could define Obamacare as expanding coverage, making sure more people are covered, which is why Katie Porter said that. She said covering everyone somehow is not the same as saying you're going to do single payer healthcare. And Medicare for all, like I said, on a federal level would also not be the same as doing single payer healthcare in California. So it's kind of the same argument, right? Like, it would be a lot to transfer California's healthcare program into single payer. Tom Steyer is saying the only way to reduce the ballooning healthcare costs in California is to switch to single payer before it happens on a federal level. So again, the only argument against that is that it would be inconvenient for the large insurance companies and other aspects of the healthcare industry in California that would be completely changed or wiped out because of a switch to single payer. Again, it's just punting. It's saying the federal level should take care of that, and we can do some kind of business cooperative type of plan in the meantime, which is exactly what Obama did with the Affordable Care Act. So the whole single payer in California versus Medicare for all is an interesting dynamic to me because it does need to happen on a federal level. And there's a sense of like, what is the whole point of switching over the whole California system to single payer if the ultimate goal is to, just do that throughout the country? I think the answer is, first of all, there's no clear track to Medicare for all in the whole country as of right now. Like, that exists in some people's mind. I think more and more people are coming to the conclusion that we need single payer healthcare. My conservative uncle just said to me the other day that we need to just do fully socialized healthcare because people recognize it as a relatively simple solution. So since there's no clear path to Medicare for all being a federally considered policy right now, it makes sense for California to lead the way on that, even if in the middle of the project of trying to switch over, Medicare for all ends up getting enacted on a federal level. That would be the ideal scenario in some ways, because California could then reallocate those resources to a different place. Because ultimately, I agree that a Medicare for all system would be better. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that we're ever going to see that type of momentum at a federal level. So if there's an opportunity to get single payer healthcare done in California right now, it should be done, because at least you could get everybody in California covered, and then it could also operate as an example for how it could be done in the future. California, in some ways is like its own country. So it would operate as just as good of an example of single payer as any other country that has it. So the last part I want to get to here is probably the wildest exchange in this whole debate is Chad Bianco. This is one of the Republicans who's running. The other one's name is Steve Hilton, and he's British, oddly. And I believe he's the one who has the Trump endorsement. So this other guy is like an election denier and apparently an oath keeper, which comes up in this debate, which oath keepers are like the militia that had to do with January 6th and are very right wing. And this debate is weird because these two Republicans are just sitting here on stage debating with the rest of the Democrats. So they're kind of like Beavis and Butthead in the middle, while, you know, the Democrats are talking about like healthcare and shit. And they're just like, these guys, can you believe these guys want to do taxes? So it's just kind of a useless and stupid format. And like I said, me personally, I'm not taking either of these Republicans that seriously. Certainly not this Chad Bianco guy, but we'll see if that changes in the future. But here's him justifying his being an oath keeper.
How about the 3 DUIs before that?
Finish?
No.
Or do you want to be the bully that you always are?
No,
You know, you're an oath keeper. We all know that.
and I'm very proud of it.
No, well, you should.
I'm very proud of it. And guess what? You're going to swear an oath, and you swore an oath. You should know what you were swearing and be proud of defending it.
I don't think an oath keeper is qualified to be governor.
I don't think you know what an oath keeper is.
And you said you're a proud oath keeper. Are you referring to the group?
I've sworn an oath 3 times to defend my Constitution.
An oath and
yes, and everybody that wants to, like, again, lie and emotionally get all spun up about the Oath Keeper organization, I just would, before you do that, and I know none of you have, I want you to go read the mission statement of the Oath Keeper mission statement and the
I saw them on CNN attacking the Capitol.
And the ACLU. I saw a politician molesting kids. Does that mean you molest kids?
What?
Exactly. Don't pull those stupid statements out and expect to not be called out.
Keeper.
But Sheriff Bianco,
You have no reason to.
There is
you're
absolutely
not qualified to be governor of California.
I am extremely proud of swearing an oath to defend my Constitution against politicians like this.
And do you still consider yourself a member of that group, to be clear?
No.
Yeah, so this guy he's arguing with here is named Antonio Villaraigosa. Not so much a factor in this race. And this particular guy, Bianco, is really just kind of a sideshow in the whole thing. He has this whole case to try to overturn or investigate election results in, I guess, his district. He's a sheriff, but now he is being prosecuted for improperly handling those documents that he was trying to investigate. And here he is defending the fact that he's an oath keeper. All of that, how horrible that looked, talking about being an oath keeper and defending them just to say that he doesn't consider himself part of the group anymore. Just, I don't get what that's for. Or what the point of putting this particular guy on the debate stage. But, you know, he has enough support that it at least got him that far. And so what I think is likely here is that if one of these Republicans squeaks through, the race would be a lot closer with them versus Becerra than it would be Tom Steyer versus some Republican. If it's Tom Steyer versus a Republican, the Republican's getting washed because there's no way they're going to go for some kook or somebody preaching austerity when somebody more progressive is on the ballot who's actually meeting the moment. Now, you could argue somebody like Becerra is still progressive, but at the same time, his job specifically is to not meet the moment and to try to find some way to compromise with the corporate class and get some message across that will have enough support that he could maybe beat a Republican without actually challenging corporate power too much rhetorically. So that's why if he were to be one of the nominees that gets through, it would be a much closer and less enthusiastic race. So the other more likely option is that just 2 Democrats win and these Republicans get washed out. You know, we'll see. It'll be a good test of where exactly California's at if either of these Republicans even end up in the general election at all. Tom Steyer, I think, is likely to be one of the 2 that makes it across, barring anything crazy that happens. We'll see. And Becerra has been largely artificially floated. So I think that a lot of that will come out in the final results. I think that Steyer will do well. Republicans might overperform. And hopefully we get Tom Steyer versus the Oath Keeper guy, because that would be an easy layup and also pretty funny.